Alright you guys, so I'm going to try and explain what you need to do with your data in one take. So what I'm showing you here is the completed product. We're going to try and get to this, so if you're handy with Excel, you can just look at this and get to this point. But what I'm going to do for most of you is I'm going to break down everything that I need you to do. So you have your raw data and you should essentially have a table like this in your notes. Now you'll notice that I was measuring in millimeters. A lot of you are measuring in centimeters. It's not a big deal which one you do. But you should have two columns just like this side by side, and you can title them interval and distance. Now you'll notice that you can adjust the width of these cells by clicking on the side of it. So if it's too small and it's not fitting in, you get this little arrow, adjust the width to whatever you want. Okay, in this one I had 30 intervals. You may have more than that, you may have less. It's not a big deal. So let's put in two new columns for our process data table, and what it's going to be is it's going to be total time in seconds, and it's going to be total distance. For me, it's measured in millimeters. If we have these columns here and we want to center them, just go up here, click center. For the total time, remember that we had the spark timer set to 25 Hertz. So in the first interval, it took 1/25th of a second to travel this 1.8 millimeters. So what I'm going to do for the total time is I'm going to say that it's equal to 1 times 1/25th of a second. And if I did this correctly, it should come out to 0.04 seconds. Now this is the nice part of Excel, is I can just do this whole row without having to type anything in. If you go to the bottom right hand corner, you should see this little black cross. Click and drag all the way down and it will fill in all those values for you. You'll notice that the decimal place isn't consistent right now, so let's put this entire row to the nearest hundredth. So I'm going to highlight it all, click and drag again, and then you can adjust your decimal using these right here. So you'll notice if I click that one, it goes the decimal that way. If I click this one, I can adjust it, and I can adjust all those values to the nearest hundredth so that they all look nice and clean and are to the same precision. Total distance is going to be another nice little easy trick that we can do, is we're going to go, this one is just equal to this value right here, because in the first interval the total distance it traveled was 1.8. Now for this one right here, what it's going to be equal to is it's equal to this one plus my new value, this one. And when we click on that, it should say 4.3. Now we can populate this entire row and it will tell us all those distances. You'll notice all of these are to the nearest tenth already, so I don't need to do that decimal, but I'm going to do it anyways because it will just make sure that our graphs look the best. And then if I want to center all of this, I can. Okay, now it's time to do our graph. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to this home bar here and go to Insert. In physics, this is the only type of graph you'll ever do, is you're going to do an XY scatter plot. So I'm going to click on this button right now. When you click on this button, you should be on an empty cell so that it doesn't just throw in a bunch of random data. So we're going to do an XY scatter plot with none of these line things, just points. And you should just have a blank window like this. Now what you can do is you can select the data that you want to use. So I'm going to click on the select data button and I'm going to add. We can do the series name afterwards. It's just going to be the title of our chart. I'm going to go to my X values. Now this is a distance versus time graph. My manipulated variable is time. It's on my x-axis. So I'm going to highlight this entire row or entire column. Then I'm going to go down to my y values, and I'm going to select all my y values. What we should see when we hit OK is this nice curve. Anytime you want to do anything with a graph, what you're going to do is you're going to click on this Add Chart Element. So let's say that we want to have titles for our axes. I'm going to go to Add Chart Element and Axes Titles. So let's do our horizontal one first. We know that this is our total time. So we're going to write in that and then our units, which are seconds. Now we can do our vertical ones. This is total distance. So you can click on the title if you want to see what you're entering in. And for me, it's in millimeters. With the actual title of the graph, it should have already populated once. You can just click on it, and then we're just going to put in a descriptive title. So for me, I'm going to title it as total distance traveled as a function of time for an air puck traveling down an inclined table. So the only other things we need to do now is we want to put a function. So we want to draw a smooth curve that represents this data properly. So we're going to go back to Add Chart Element, and we're going to look at trend lines. Now this isn't linear. What we're going to do is we're going to have an exponential. Oh no. So we're going to go to More Trendline Options, and we have a polynomial. This is a quadratic for those of you guys who have taken math. And we're going to have a degree 2 polynomial. So it may have given you a linear one first of all. So I'm going to click on polynomial, order 2, and you'll see how nicely that fits our data. This data is actual data that I collected myself, so yours should be a nice smooth curve like this too. Now, I always like to extrapolate my data a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this forward. So I'm going to say, okay, we'll move it forward maybe 0.2 periods. That might be a little bit much. So 1.5. And then I'm just going to move it back slightly, just at 0.04, just so it goes right back all the way to the origin. If we don't want to have negatives, maybe we go 0.03. Okay. Now the last thing that we want to do is we want to put an equation on this and an r² value. I can explain what these represent later on, but for right now you just want to have them as part of your graph. Okay. If you ever want to change any of your font, so let's say I want Times New Roman, I'm going to go in here, click on it. Maybe I want it to be a little bit larger. Maybe I want to bold it. And you can adjust all of your fonts accordingly to whatever you want. But this is essentially that finished product that we want to have at this point. And you guys can hand in this graph with your table on Wednesday. So how you actually will hand this in is you'll do it as a Word document. So you'll just take this table right here and this graph, put it into a Word document. You can print that off and hand it in on Tuesday. Hopefully this is helpful. Yeah, have a great day.